Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Tonight we dive into one of the most extraordinary events of recent military history. An incident that began in the skies over international waters, but quickly escalated into a geopolitical shockwave that left the world holding its breath. Imagine a fighter jet, sleek, deadly, and built for dominance, ramming into the most advanced stealth aircraft ever deployed. That's what happened when a Venezuelan fighter pilot took a desperate gamble and collided with an F-35. Belonging to the U.S. Navy, what happened next shocked everyone. It started with a routine patrol mission. The F-35 soared across the horizon, its low, observable frame slicing through clouds, scanning for threats and demonstrating deterrence. On the ground, political leaders trained their eyes on the skies, weary of escalation, mindful of the fragile balance. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Caracas, the Venezuelan government had grown increasingly bold. Tensions had been simmering. Sanctions, blockades, naval posturing in the Caribbean. The Venezuelan Air Force, feeling cornered and defiant, launched a fighter in what was described as a show of force. But this mission wasn't simply about a flyby or a signal. It became a decision that would rewrite the rules of aerial engagement. From the cockpit of the Venezuelan fighter, we sense the rising pulse of tension. The pilot is trained and loyal, but also told to send a message. He locks his target, the F-35. In the control center back in Washington, faces go pale. Something unprecedented is unfolding. The F-35, momentarily surprised, detects an incoming threat. The pilot inside braces for evasive maneuvers. Then, the moment of contact, the Venezuelan jet rams the F-35, metal on metal, disrupts avionics, rattles the fuselage. In that split second, two very different worlds collide. Literally, shock ripples across command rooms. In Washington, the admiral slams the table, his voice clipped as he orders emergency protocols. The F-35, though damaged, remains airborne, battle-tested but shaken. In Caracas, jubilant voices claim a victory. The pilot returns to base as a hero among some, while others question the order. Meanwhile, in the skies, the consequences spool outward. Radar locks, scramble orders, diplomatic alarms. The world watches as a superpower's stealth asset is violated, and the message is clear. Nothing is off limits. What happens next? First comes the immediate aftermath. The F-35 limps back to a forward operating base, its stealth coating cracked, sensors impaired. On board, the pilot steadies his breath and reports status: damage sustained. I have control. Back in Washington, the White House convenes an emergency meeting. The National Security Advisor leans over maps, satellite images flickering across screens. Options are laid out. Diplomatic protest, economic retaliation, naval redeployment, air superiority demonstration. Meanwhile, in Caracas, the president appears on television, flanked by military commanders, declaring that Venezuela has taken a stand against what it calls persistent aggression. The tone is defiant, but behind the bravado, fear permeates. Leaders in Moscow and Beijing listen intently. The collision becomes a ripple in a broader game of influence. Russia calls for restraint but praises the principle of resisting dominance. China watches for any sign of U.S. weakness. The incident is no longer about two jets. It's about global hierarchies, alliances, principle, and power. In Berlin and London, senior officials scramble to interpret what this means for NATO, for deterrence, for rules of engagement. In Kiev, the skyline stands battered but defiant, a reminder that aerial warfare is not abstract. The air is full of history and stakes. As days pass, the United States launches a multi-pronged response. The Navy dispatches an aircraft carrier group to the Caribbean, F-35s fly reconnaissance missions, and AWACS planes circle. Sanctions tighten on Venezuela. Oil exports are targeted. Diplomatic channels begin to freeze up. The president addresses the nation. We will protect our assets, we will defend our people, and we will uphold international norms. Meanwhile, in Caracas, the military brass convenes late into the night. The collision is celebrated as a strategic statement, but also analyzed for errors. The pilot is debriefed. Questions linger. Was it intentional? Was it miscalculated? Did it push the world too far? The geopolitical tension escalates. In Havana, the Cuban leadership watches nervously. In Bogota, Colombia increases surveillance. In Miami, the U.S. homeland is on heightened alert. The Caribbean Sea becomes a chessboard. Ships, submarines, aircraft, all positioning for the next move. The incident has cracked open an old equilibrium. Diplomats whisper of a new normal, a world where lesser powers can risk direct action against superpowers. The U.S. responds with calculated force and measured rhetoric. Venezuela grooms its narrative of standing up to dominance. The world takes notice. The cost of deterrence just went up. On the personal level, the pilots become symbols. The Venezuelan pilot is praised in state media, paraded before cameras, lauded as courageous. Yet he carries the weight of what he did. In his quarters, he stares out at the runway where his jet rests, damaged but defiant. On the other side, the U.S. pilot recovers in a quiet hospital ward, questioning how a routine mission turned into a historic collision. He contemplates the fragility of dominance, the randomness of war. Neither wanted escalation. They both served their countries. But history moved without permission. Back in the Pentagon, war games commence. Analysts debate the rules of engagement. If a non-NATO state can ram an F-35, what happens next time? Do we fire back? Do we negotiate? The calculus becomes messy. In Moscow, government insiders say the incident shows cracks in U.S. air dominance. Others say it merely provokes a stronger response. A month later, the F-35 flies again. Its crew reports mission accomplished, yet the tone is grim. The damage lingers, the mindset shifts. In Caracas, the president visits the flight line, places a wreath by the battered Venezuelan jet, and speaks of resilience and sovereignty. Meanwhile, Minsk, Riyadh, New Delhi, all watch and adjust. For ordinary citizens, the risk is abstract but real. Oil prices tick upward, trade routes shift, insurance rates for ships in the region rise. For young Air Force cadets in Caracas, the collision becomes legend. We stood up, they say. For U.S. war planners, it becomes a case study. Inspect the vulnerabilities of stealth assets, reconsider threat thresholds, refine escalation ladders. Across the globe, satellite imagery of the damaged F-35 circulates in military briefings. Headlines declare, Carrier Group steams Caribbean. Venezuela boldly challenges U.S. air supremacy. The world is louder now, more reactive. Yet amid the drama, there is fragility. A misstep, a miscalculation. The collision could have detonated a full-blown war. In late hours, diplomats in Brussels, Moscow, and Beijing quietly work channels to de-escalate. Public message remains strong, but private calls stress restraint. Because the truth is, when a state rams a stealth jet, the threshold for war lowers. Allies whisper of obligations. Adversaries whisper of opportunity. The Caribbean becomes not just a sea, but a symbol, a place where the unthinkable happened and where the future of air power doctrine may be rewritten. In the skies above the Caribbean now, the roar of jets is heavier with meaning. The F-35 flies with additional escort. Rules of engagement are stricter. No flight path is routine. On the ground, Venezuelan air defense batteries remain alert. Coastal radars track every blip. The collision is not just a physical impact, it is a psychological one. It says, we can hit you, whether you're the superpower or the challenger. And for many countries watching, that message resonates. As we look ahead, several possibilities unfold. The U.S. might seek to restore deterrence through public demonstration of force, perhaps staging joint exercises with allies in the region. Venezuela might leverage political capital, deepen alliances with states that challenge U.S. power. For the pilot who rammed, his name enters history books, hero or reckless, depending on the observer. For the U.S. pilot, his mission becomes a legacy of survival, of resilience under attack. For global military doctrine, the incident may force a revision of how we view aerial collisions, management of escalation, and the notion of acceptable risk. Now imagine the human side, survivors walking away from the plug-shattered cockpit, commanders pacing in war rooms, diplomats on fast dial, mechanics stripping down the damaged F-35 to its core, Venezuelan pilots cleaning the jet's fuselage after the landing. The world changes in those moments. Quiet maintenance bays and echoing control rooms. We often see war as explosions and headlines, but the truth is the tension, the waiting, the silent dread, the message that every movement carries weight. And this collision brought that to the fore. It forced the question, when the rules change, how do we respond? In closing, the story of the Venezuelan fighter ramming an F-35 is more than a single event. It is a symbol of changing power dynamics, of bold defiance, of risk and consequence. It reminds us that even in the skies where speed and technology reign, human decisions matter. The pilot's choice, the commander's orders, the leader's tone, the world's response, all of them collide just like steel on steel, and the ripples spread far beyond the moment of impact. And as we track the aftermath, military maneuvers, diplomatic chess, public opinion, the truth remains. No one involved will forget what happened, and no one watching will treat the skies the same again. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.